Okay, as I mentioned before, I would show you how to make pizza. Okay, the first thing you do is you get the yeast ready. Now I'm using this dried yeast, and you want a small bowl about half full of lukewarm water. Now I'm going to make 2 pizzas, so for each pizza we use pretty much a rounded tablespoon of yeast. Stir it in, get it melted, and remember to use lukewarm water to activate it. We will occasionally stir this. Leave that sit for now. Now the amount of flour I'm going to use, well, for each 12-inch round pizza, I'm using roughly about a cup and a half of flour. Now you can use all-purpose flour, but this time I'm going to use bread machine flour. You could even use about 2/3 all-purpose flour and maybe 1/3 pastry flour to soften it. And to this flour I'm going to add about half a teaspoon of salt and mix in the salt. So it doesn't always have to be just the basic all-purpose flour, but always remember pizza uses less yeast than a loaf of bread. The dough is quite similar, but just less yeast. I could probably make my own pizza sauce, but you know what? That just takes too long. So I buy the canned pizza sauce, or in a jar, whatever. It's a lot easier. Works just as well. What I like to do is throw in, this is a jar of chopped garlic. Adds a bit more flavor to it. Okay, that's the pizza sauce. And also, I buy the pre-sliced pepperoni. It works just as well. It's easier than having to slice your own. Just as good. Now, the yeast. You occasionally stir it. As you can see, it's a little bit foamy on top there, so it's starting to activate. Another 5 minutes will be ready. Okay, now then, back to the dough. Okay, this yeast, a couple of lumps in there, stir it in. Okay, that's good. So that goes in, and this is a glass of just lukewarm water. Give it a little splash or two. I don't have a mixing machine, so I'm going to do a lot of this. This is all going to be done by hand. Now what I'm doing here is I'm going to come out with a lump of dough that's just slightly too wet. Now the reason for that is because it will help me get all the yeast and flour and everything all mixed thoroughly. So it's going to come out looking like a piece of dough that's just a little bit too wet, but then I'll show you what we do after to get the dough to the right consistency by adding more flour by hand and kneading it in and rolling it around by hand. That's just about it. Make sure you got something really sturdy to stir it with. Okay, that's good for now. Okay, we got the counter cleaned off and dried. This is a cereal bowl with almost full of flour. Now I mentioned how I started off with slightly too wet. That just helps me get all the ingredients mixed in. The rest of the flour, we'll roll it in by hand. Scrape it all out. And the rest of the flour, we mix it in by hand. So whatever rolling motion you like to use, just squeeze it around, roll it. It's all how you want to do it. But as you can see, I'm just getting all this flour on the table rolled into it, and I'll bring it to its right consistency. And what you want is not too dry on the outside and not too sticky. Just slightly tacky. In a way it'll feel like a piece of bread dough, so it'll be quite similar. Okay, that's getting close to what I want. So what I do now is I just roll it, fold it. So yeah, just roll it into the flour, give it a turn, a fold. Keep doing that. It's still a bit sticky, so we'll keep doing this. And it feels, yeah, that's pretty close. Just a little bit more. Don't worry about putting too much flour in, because it does take a lot of work to get mixed in the first place. You just gotta push hard while you're doing it. Okay, that's just about it. Okay, feels just right. Now I said I'm going to make 2 pizzas, so they feel that's pretty close. Now here's what you want to do. Because the pizza pan is round, what I want to do is squeeze it down like that and get it nice and round. So what you do is you cup your hands over top of it. There, get it nice and round. You don't want to push too hard. You just want to get a rolling action going like that. There we go. Make sure you got enough flour underneath them. And sit them aside. And these are going to sit for approximately close to 15 minutes, so they rise up a bit so that they're easier to pin out. Now, whilst I'm waiting for that dough to rise, these pizza pans, well, dribble some oil into it and just spread it around by hand. You just want a light oiling on it. If there's a little excess, do that. So yeah, just a light oiling. And also, what I like to do is give it a light dusting of flour. Just throw it on. Tap off the excess. So while I'm waiting for that pizza dough to rise, what I did was I greased the pans. I got the pans ready. And I'm going to slice some onions. We're just going to keep it simple. Cheese, pepperoni, and onion. In the meantime, I preheated the oven to 425. Now, it seems like a high temperature, but when you look at any pizza oven in any restaurant, what they use is about 500 or more. Okay, it's been 15 minutes. This here dough is ready to go. So you scoop it up with a spatula or get a knife underneath it. And put a fair bit of flour on the table. And the dry side that's been sitting there on top, flip that over. Give it a quarter turn. Do the same thing. Make sure you got enough flour underneath it. Now all I got is this here wimpy little rolling pin. And you know, if you don't have a rolling pin, you can probably use a wine bottle. Or you could take the time to squeeze it out into the pan. It won't take much pinning because the dough has a chance to sit there and get soft and rise. I'm looking for about a medium thickness. Now to check the size, I put the pan near it. Okay, just a little bit more. Just on the edges. Yeah, I wish I had a bigger rolling pin than this little wimpy thing. Jesus. Go around the edges like that. Get the stretch out of it after you pin it. That's pretty close. Also, look at the shape of it so you can see where it needs more. This is all you do. Fold it in half. Gently pick it up. Get it pretty centered. Move it around till you get it just right. And you can tuck it in where it needs it more. Push inwards just a little bit. That way all that stretch from pinning the dough is gone and the dough will not recede on you. There, I didn't even need to trim the excess. Just get it just right. Okay, after I got the dough in the pan, you don't use it right away. You don't put the sauce on it right away. You let it rise first. If you don't, you have a tough crust. So these are going to sit here for about 15 to 20 minutes. And you can tell just by feel that they almost double their thickness. Okay, so in the meantime, well, might as well grate the cheese. Okay, I think I grated enough. I did not use the whole thing. Yeah, leftovers. Last time I left them chocolate. They didn't seem to like that. Maybe they're getting too picky. I don't know. Okay, these have been sitting long enough. They feel like they're almost double their size. Now when you spread the sauce, don't push too hard because the dough has risen a bit. As for the cheese, well, you don't want to overdo it because you don't want too much weight on top of that dough. You can spread it around with your fingers. Okay, you want it about like that. And a little bit of onion. Okay, we're ready to go. Okay, so far it's been 20 minutes. And what I've done so far is I've rotated them because there's always more heat towards the back of an oven. You can also look underneath. It's starting to get brown. Yeah, they're getting pretty close. So what you want is golden brown. Alright. You slice off a few pieces. Yeah, it turned out pretty good. Yeah, I guess I'm happy with that. So I used bread machine flour to make it this time instead of regular flour. And made for a pretty tender crust. It's pretty puffy. I probably could have used just a little bit less yeast. Other than that, turned out not too bad.